that truth, by the permission of our origins and our history, is not in America confined to this or that pulpit, or to this or that church, or to this or that sectarian. No, that's a common possession. It's the ground we stand on as a people. And therefore, it is part of what we have to do if we're going to understand and acknowledge who we are and what we represent as Americans, but on behalf, I believe, of all humankind. Our rights come from God. Now see, that can provide you with a lot of comfort and confidence, because it means, of course, that no matter what may be your material circumstances and condition, no matter what may be your relative position in the world, you can still stand with confidence to lay claim to that dignity which does not depend upon the world, does not depend upon its material standards and conditions and choices and powers, but rather comes from a hand more powerful than any human hand, a will more powerful than any human will, an authority beyond the reach of any human authority. I think that our ability to have confidence in that claim and to look to that transcendent power for our dignity and the basis for our demand that every life, no matter how weak, helpless, poor, voiceless, must be respected in its dignity and integrity. I think that that's a wonderful thing, and it's wonderful that we can make these claims. But it also has another side to it, and it's the side we don't really want to think about these days, some of us. Because there's a natural and logical corollary to that notion that our rights come from God. It's very easy to understand. Our rights come from God, and therefore, according to our Declaration, all government, all use of power in society and whatever, has to be based on consent and has to respect human rights and choices, or at least the human capacity for choice. Why is that? Well, obviously it's because we respect the source. It would make no difference that our rights come from God if we have no respect for God. Obviously. The Creator, that is the author of all things, is invoked in the Declaration as an authority. And it is on the basis of that authority that we claim our rights and dignity. But as I often ask people, what happens if we deny the existence of God? Well, we've denied the authority. What happens if we acknowledge the existence of God but claim that His authority has no relevance to our public life and our institutions? Well, if you reject the authority, then you have no reason to respect the rights that are claimed on the basis of that authority. It's really very simple. But that means, logically and sensibly, that if our rights come from God, then we must use those rights in such a way as to respect the authority from which they come. Doesn't that follow? Destroy the authority, you've destroyed the claim to rights. That means you must use the rights in a way that doesn't destroy the authority. That therefore respects the authority of the Creator, because it is by virtue of that authority that however weak we may be, however voiceless we may be, however powerless we may seem in the eyes of the world, each and every one of us can still lay claim to our dignity. And that means that appeal to God is not only something that gives us comfort when we're making claims, it's also something that has to be for us a constraint, a guide, an authority when we are making choices. It is in some ways the beauty, I believe, of the understanding of freedom and liberty that our founders gave to us, because it was naturally self-limiting. They weren't fools. They knew good and well that you couldn't sustain a society on the basis of an idea of freedom that told people, do what you please, do whatever feels good today. Since it would lead to disorder and murder and anarchy and all of the horrible consequences that come from unbridled passion When those who have the strength and the will and the resources are willing to pursue their satisfaction at the expense of those who don't. It's a horrible place. We are saved from that concept of licentious freedom by this very understanding of where our liberty comes from. The understanding that since it comes from the Creator and is based on the authority of the Creator, in our use of it, we must acknowledge the limits that are imposed by the Creator's existence and His will. And some of you may say, oh, it's a good theological discussion. No, it's not. That's an exposition of the American idea. That's an exposition of the American principle of justice. Without that principle, we are not a nation. We're just a disparate bunch of folks who happen to have fallen together in the same geographic locale for a little while in time, and who could very well fall apart because we lose sight of those things that bind us in spite of all our differences into one people, one nation. And obviously these are tangible things. We look different. Some of us talk funny. Some of us come from backgrounds in every continent and place on the globe. We have all different kinds of heritages. I mean, in that respect, we are not one nation. And yet it's possible for folks to come from any part of the world, as my spouse did. She's originally from India. And you come, you stay a while here, and then you stand before a judge and show your knowledge of our heritage, and you swear allegiance to our principles, and you're an American just like that. You're naturalized. I've always thought that it was kind of presumptuous of us to use a word like that, don't you? Like, we are the masters of nature, and you can suddenly do what nature did not. We'll make you an American. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, though, once that whole process is finished, you are an American. As real and true as anybody else. How can this be? Well, it wouldn't be. If in order to be American, there had to be some claim by birth or biology or something else that tied you to the place and the people in the way of ethnic ties and racial ties. You don't need those things. What makes us a nation is that acknowledgement of our common moral principles and beliefs. Because we stand on the common ground of our creed and are associated with one another by the indissoluble bonds of that allegiance to truth, of that allegiance to an idea of justice which respects the dignity and worth of every human being. Now, I've gone through this kind of long preface because I don't really think you can understand the significance of the issues that we confront today, deriving from all of these various ways in which the regime of abortion and the culture of death are working themselves out in our lives. We can't understand any of these things in their true implications if we don't continually remind ourselves of what I just said, and therefore of the relationship between our moral principles and our national identity, between what we believe to be just and who we are as a people. Once we understand that connection, we realize that whatever the specious arguments that are used to justify the abandonment of those moral principles, whatever it is they're offering us in exchange, what we are giving up is far more precious and important than anything they can offer us. Now, the offer comes in many forms. One of the major forms, which has been involved in this whole abortion thing, is an offer to let people do whatever they want in terms of sexual activity without having to deal with the consequences. There have been various forms throughout human history where that offer was made. And given our nature in one respect, I suppose it's going to be an offer that's seconded by many of our passions, right? I mean, the notion that you're going to live a hedonistic life where you can indulge to your heart's content in whatever use and abuse of your body you'd like to make in order to achieve pleasure. This has even been equated sometimes in places with paradise itself.